Hey, bows and bow ties. Somebody just told me that they liked my sunglasses, and I'm like, I do too. Anyway, look, women, can y'all please stop going on these like male podcasts and discussing gender war topics? I just feel like it's such a lose-lose proposition. I just think that it's just not a good look. I wrote down some reasons why. This is the thing. I feel like oftentimes women go on these podcasts and they're just talked over. They're talked over. Like, dudes will interrupt and they speak over them like they're like really loud and aggressive. I'm not saying every dude so, but I'm not gonna qualify everything either. But I'm like, why do y'all keep going on there so like some dude can like loud talk you, right? It's like, please cut it out. I don't know why women feel the need to go on these podcasts. Okay, I'm going to give you another reason why you don't need to be going on these podcasts. I feel like at this point, it's like when you go on these podcasts, they are controlling the narrative. So it doesn't matter what you say. They will reframe it in a way that's more like a straw man argument, right? So you're saying if you don't do this, you're saying this. And that's not even what people are saying half the time. I just feel like the whole thing is just so dumb. I'm like, please stop going on these podcasts, having these ignorant discussions. I think much of what happens is somebody get on there and they'll say things like, I'm just making it up. They'll talk about like, oh, um, men shouldn't get married. And women will say, well, maybe you're not ready for a relationship or something like that. And then they'll counter it like 70% of women are filing for divorce. And they'll say, well, that's because there's forms of abuse. And then they'll say something, I'm just making this up. They'll say something like, so you're saying all men are abusive. I'm like, that's not what they're saying. I just feel like when you go on these podcasts that are basically hosted by men, they're going to control the narrative, right? Like there's no real healthy dialogue in between. So they will reframe and repackage your responses to these questions. It's just so silly. And then when they like post like their like the whole situation, they're gonna take portions and snippets of it that lose the context, and then they'll post what makes you look the most silly so that they can get some sort of viral run out of it. So I'm like, why do you guys continue to go on these silly podcasts? Anyway, I find that many of them are like master exploiters. Okay. Because what they're going to do is they're going to take these women who choose to be, sorry, I have a couple of notes here. They're going to take women who go on these podcasts, and then what they're going to do is they're going to take like the most ridiculous thing and they'll use you as part of like an image or a thumbnail or something like that. Because what they have to do is they have to make it appealing for people to come into their space, right? They'll say like, uh, um, woman of the night, try not to use really bad language, but woman of the night comes on show with no clothes on. I don't know, whatever. Like they'll come up with these ridiculous titles and they'll find like the worst picture or like basically the one time you may say something like, I didn't say that, right? And they'll get a screen snap of you going, and then they'll say, woman enraged on podcast then talking about her past. I don't know. That's the kind of stuff that happens. So they get these viral moments. They'll get a weird snapshot of you. You could have been composed the entire time, but they'll get that one time where you're like, I did not say that. And next thing you know, you look like some raving lunatic. Oh, man, I feel like I'm going to sneeze. And then what happens is they will be very provocative and ask you about these provocative topics to try to get people all riled up, to make you look crazy. They'll ask something ridiculous and you're like, are you serious? Or they'll make a ridiculous comment. So people will go down that bunny trail of trying to dispel some bad information. And I'm like, why are you dedicating cycles to this? Stop doing it. They can't have a show if you don't show up. They'll be forced to, curate their own content without you. They need that viral content. Stop doing it. Stop being a ding-a-ling and giving them these clickbaity things that they can make. It's just so silly to me. Another reason why I actually think people need to stop going on these podcasts right now is, besides the fact that no one knows how to talk to each other, but I just feel like they're so misogynistic. They refer to women who are there or not there as three or fours and whores and all stuff like that. And I'm just kind of like, they can't just say, hey, men and women. Everything's misogynistic. I find that a lot of these guys that talk down to women, like they're sourcing a certain type of woman who may not be well versed in defending herself or defending topics, or maybe not well read or whatever. I'm not saying that they have to be sophisticated. What I am saying is maybe the art of debate is not their strength. And so they get put into these gotcha moments, and it's like they don't know how to pivot from that. And then they'll get these gotcha moments on these women and be like, see, they're just so dumb. I got them. See, look at this. I showed her. And I'm just kind of like, what are you trying to prove? I just wish women would stop going on these shows, giving them all of this content that they can make fun of them for. It's secondhand embarrassment. Okay. And what I also find too is, because they're so misogynistic and they talk down to these women, they're very aggressive. They're very aggressive. I think about how they're like yelling, and some of them used to kick people out. That's back in that fresh and fit days. They're stupid. But I think that they like to call people names, and they're just really disrespectful. They're not looking for constructive, healthy dialogue. They're looking to show you, humiliate you, denigrate you. Anyway, I find what happens is, when women go on these shows, they're having to extend a lot of emotional labor. They're going on these shows trying to prove their points, dispel all these myths. It just becomes like hotly contested. And then whenever a woman says, hey, look, I don't know, maybe your experiences with certain types of women have led to this, but not everybody's like that. These men will dispute your claim. They will not hear you, right? I'll tell you what I also see is, a lot of women, especially women who look like me, will go on these podcasts trying to defend their femininity. And I'm like, you shouldn't be defending your femininity to any of them. They're not going to listen, right? So it's like, I feel like your womanhood, your femininity is being put on trial. Let me tell you something. There's nothing worse than women just trying to get up on a stage trying to argue with men. I feel like right now, the sexes are just so divided right now. I feel like there needs to be like just like this cooling period of where like cooler heads can prevail. Because right now, I just feel like the little I see out there, because I try to avoid a lot of it because it's so toxic, I don't see it being constructive. I feel like everything is hotly contested. I feel like people throw around these statistics and they don't understand the data science behind some of these statistics. So they take everything and they're just kind of like, this has got to be what it is, and not understanding what the numbers mean. So I don't know. I just feel like when they're going on these podcasts and they're getting beat up with meaningless statistics, many of these women don't know how to actually confront the data. Well, you don't confront data, but confront the person who's presented the data and like dissecting that data, consuming the data, and saying, okay, look, let's unpack this, right? They don't know how to do that oftentimes. And the men are smart enough to pick women that they know will struggle with that sort of thing. So anyway, and then what happens is they get frustrated, and then their femininity is under trial because people may or may not, react a certain kind of way. I just think it's ridiculous. But I think what happens too is, when women go on these podcasts, they're continuing to legitimize these platforms. They're legitimizing the platforms. They go on these podcasts, yipping and yapping about things that don't need to be discussed over and over and over again. And what happens is these men are getting these viral clips and and stuff that people want to see, like the fights, right? Like people are here for the mess. And so anyway, I just feel like what happens is they they're not gonna they're gonna continue to platform or legitimize the platform of people but with like these problematic views. That's what's happening. They're not gonna provide anything that's balanced. So that's what's going on. I don't know. That's just where I'm at with it. Let me see. I don't think that when women are going on these, this is the thing, when women go on these platforms, one of the things that I see is that, oh gosh, I feel like something is tickling me. I feel like what's happening is, I don't, well, from my, okay, how do I say it? The way I'm looking at it is, I don't feel like those spaces are healthy, safe spaces for women, if that makes sense. They're constantly on the defense. I don't think that they are being treated as equals, having healthy discourse, right? I feel like the women are not in safe spaces. I feel like it is aggressive. I feel like oftentimes it's hostile. I feel like oftentimes it's accusatory, and I don't know. I don't think it's a healthy place. I think oftentimes women go on these platforms and then they're called all these names. I remember, was it a year or two ago, there was that fresh and fit, whichever way it goes. I believe it's Fresh and Fit. That podcast of weirdos with like, there was like a woman, I think, who went on the show and her social media was attacked. You know, they went after her. So you put yourself in a situation where people are trying to attack you, you know, in social media, they're attacking you in that environment. I think it's just unhealthy. I just think it's not a safe place for women. I think women are not getting anything out of it other than being exploited for content. They're being exploited for content. Anyway, at the end of the day, I feel like much of the discussion is not very constructive at all. Only certain types of women are sourced. There's no diversity in the types of women that are in there. And same thing with men, right? Like the same type of woman is being sourced for these conversations who may not be equipped to have such conversations, right? So they're not bringing in anyone who um, would be a worthy adversary, and it shouldn't even be adversarial if you're asking me. I just feel like there's a lot of bullying that's going on these podcasts. It's just kind of gross to me, actually. It's like you get a bunch of dudes up there with a microphone yelling and saying some wild stuff, and then um, having a bunch of people calling in and confirming their bias. You know, many of these people, they have these fans who are just as psycho as they are. And so it becomes like this self-licking ice cream cone where you just keep continuing to feed yourself. Anyway, I just feel like women need to stop going on these podcasts. I don't know why it's like they want to be humiliated or something. It's like they're desperately trying to be validated by people who don't want to validate them. They don't care about them. They don't like them right now. They're angry about life. So why are you begging for their validation, approval, and acceptance? I say stay away from them for a while. Everybody needs to calm down. Stay off of each other's podcasts for right now. Don't even fight with each other. I mean, I feel like maybe one-on-one discourse would be great, but going on these panels where a bunch of dudes are sitting there with microphones talking nonsense, it's so embarrassing. It's quite cringeworthy if you ask me. Anyway, that's it. Have a good one.